Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Two Average Joes. This one's going to be special. We actually are going to have somebody here who knows what they're talking about. I think that is going to go a long way for episode 10. We're going to have a knowledgeable person here. Deliverance, it's glad to see you. You've had a heck of a week.
Yes, it has. But
And Mr. Baker, it's good to see you all the way from Allegan, Michigan.
Good to see everybody. Nice to meet the Secretary of State of Alabama, Mr. John H. Merrill.
Yes.
Thank you much. Great to be with y'all.
We're going to call you John because you said so. So anybody that's watching this and said we should have gave him an honorary title, he said call him John.
There we go. We asked him.
He did right. Checked your background. Very, very impressive. One of the reasons we're excited about you being here, and I'm not joking, is actually there couldn't be a crazier time to be in politics.
No doubt.
So a crazier time to be making decisions. And in a country that's pretty divided. I mean, if you just watch the news, just all the stuff that's going on. So just to give you a little bit of background about us, we've been doing this for about 10 episodes, and we've been discussing all the craziness that's going on. And finally, we have somebody who is in the fray.
There we go.
So without further ado, you want to give us a little bit about yourself and what's happening in Alabama and throughout the country?
Well, certainly. Let me share this with your listeners first. I think it's important to know a little bit about our office and the things that we do. The Office of the Secretary of State of Alabama is actually the oldest office in the history of the state. Alabama had a Secretary of State before we were a state. In 1818, a man named Henry Hitchcock was appointed by our fifth president, James Monroe, to serve as Alabama's first Secretary of State. And he served ably in that role in 1818 and 1819. But on December 14th, 1819, Alabama became the 22nd state admitted to the Union. And since that time, we've had 48 individuals who served as Alabama's 53 Secretaries of State. I'm the 53rd Secretary of State. Our code and our Constitution give more than 1,000 assigned duties and responsibilities to the person that holds this position. And those include, but are not limited to, the things that we've chosen to concentrate on for the last 6 years, 8 months, and 29 days. I've had the privilege to serve in this capacity. And they are elections, business incorporations, licensing, trademarking, and international adoptions. Those are the things that we have given the most attention to, because those are the things that most directly impact the lives of the 5 million Alabamians that we serve each and every day. Now, anybody in our state that really knows anything about our office knows that we are the singular voice for election administration in the state of Alabama, which includes voter registration, photo ID delivery, all the things related to the elections process. What we want to do is to ensure that the commitment that we made when I became the secretary is fulfilled. And that's to ensure that each and every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of Alabama has been given the opportunity to become a registered voter and to obtain a photo ID. And so we've tried to accomplish that a number of different ways, not the least of which is running a multimedia campaign each and every year to promote voter registration and photo ID delivery, using such notable Alabamians as Nick Saban, former Auburn University head football coach Gus Malzahn, Taylor Hicks, who was a season 5 winner for American Idol, Charles Barkley, who's in the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame, Deontay Wilder, former heavyweight boxing champion, also Jimmy Buffett, and other country music recording artists, as well as some other notable Alabamians like Dr. Mae Jemison, who was the first African-American female astronaut, and Dr. Regina Benjamin, who was the previous Surgeon General for the United States. So we want to continue to raise awareness for the people in our state about the needs that we want to help them meet when it comes to voter registration and photo ID delivery. Now, it should be important to note, and you are individuals who are very concerned about results. It's one thing to talk about promoting things. It's another thing to prove that the results are there. So since January the 19th, 2015, as of today, we have registered 1,929,751 new voters. We now have a grand total of 3,609,022 registered voters in the state of Alabama. 96% of all eligible African Americans are registered to vote. 91% of all eligible white Alabamians are registered to vote, and 94% of all eligible Alabamians are registered to vote. When you have that kind of success, there's only two words that will let you know what accomplishments we produced. And those words are roll tide.
That's
Roll
right.
Say it. Roll
You know,
Tide.
John, when you do those numbers and you talk about that's a high level of people being registered to vote in Alabama. Okay, I mean, you know, that's not even in an argument that you can make on that.
But look, also to know, and the next part of that is that in the same period of time, we've removed more than 1.35 million people from the voter rolls. And we've removed those people because they've moved away, they've passed away, or they've been put away. And whenever that happens, they need to come off the voter rolls. That's routine voter maintenance as prescribed by Alabama state law and the federal laws of the United States of America. So we have to make sure that we are doing everything we're supposed to do according to statute.
When you see that kind of success, and I mean, that's the only word you can use is success. And, you know, you turn on the news and they act like, you know, people are not getting registered, right? I mean, I know you actually send out stuff where you like, this is the myth and this is the fact about what's happening.
That's right.
I saw that and I thought that was great, but does it still make you frustrated?
Well, it does, but the thing is, we can't ever forget that those individuals that you're referring to are entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to facts. And that's the reason why we continue to promote the things that we're promoting with factual data, empirically, to prove that we've accomplished the things that we say that we're accomplishing. And the other thing that needs to be noted is in that same period of time, we have broken record after record after record for voter participation each and every election. Going back to the first one that we administered, March the 1st, 2016, which was a presidential primary, continuing up through November of last year when we had the presidential general election. And as we continue to have record participation, it's difficult for those who oppose what we're trying to do to have any foundation on which to stand. As a matter of fact, the state of Alabama was recognized by 3 entities as being the most successful state in the union for election administration in 2020. That's the first time that's ever happened in the history of our state. I take a lot of pride in that, and I get the credit for that, but I don't deserve all the credit. The credit goes to our 68 probate judges in our 67 counties, our 68 circuit clerks in our 67 counties, 67 sheriffs in our 67 counties, the thousands of poll workers that work in our 1,980 polling sites, and the 201 registrars in our 67 counties. And that training and that support and that understanding of what we are supposed to be doing is what makes Alabama the best, not just in football, but in election.
I almost wore my old Miss shirt, but a couple of weeks ago went kind of bad for us.
Well, I also think that it's...
I'm going to get you a Roll Tide shirt.
That's right. That's right.
I live in Columbus. I probably won't be wearing that, but go ahead.
I'll put it on you. You'll wear it. If I put it on you, you'll wear it.
Now, another thing that we need to note is that because I had the privilege to serve as the national president for the Republican Secretaries of State, we felt it incumbent on us to take some action because of the concerns that a number of people had all across the union about successful election administration in 2020 and whether or not the results were actually accurate. And so I contacted all the Republican secretaries and I asked each of them, look, produce for me 3 to 5 different code sections in your state law that will be proven to be successful election administration techniques. And then let's see if we can have those put together in such a way that we can take them to other states and show other states what they need to be doing in order to ensure safe, secure, and fair elections. And I did not know at the same time those actions were taking place in other groups around the nation. I subsequently discovered in late January of 2021, that the Republican National Committee had actually contacted Karl Rove and asked him if he would head up a group to study election reform and make sure that people were following election laws throughout the nation. He told him he wanted to be a part of that, but he could not lead the effort, that he felt as though that effort should be led by John Merrill, who was the Secretary of State in Alabama. So I was thrilled, first of all, that he knew my name. Secondly, he thought enough about our system to think that we would be a great example to use. And so I put together a task force with other Republican groups around the nation. We had 4 other secretaries of state that joined me: Trey Hargett from Tennessee, Laurel Lee from Florida. I also had Michael Adams from Kentucky, and Kim Wyman from Washington State, who is the only statewide Republican elected official on the entire West Coast. Then we had 50 legislators from around the 50 states to join us as we put this team together. We came up with 18 different items, pieces of legislation that had been passed in those states, that were in practice in those states, that would be viewed as best practices for election administration. And with that being said, we have 5 basic pillars for the National Commission on Election Integrity. Number 1, to empower our states. That is, to take the power of election administration, not and assign it to the federal government, but following the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution and saying that that power rests with the states. Number 2, in the area of voter registration, we believe that each and every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of that particular state should be registered to vote and participate at the level that they choose. However, we believe only U.S. citizens should be registered to vote, and we believe that all standards should be adhered to at the state and federal level. Number 3, we believe that the gold standard for voting is in-person voting on election day, and that in-person voting on election day should be accompanied by a valid government-issued photo ID. And in saying that, it puts us in a position to know who those individuals are who are participating in the electoral process and make sure that they are qualified to participate in the election. Alabama led the nation in voter participation on election day, with 87% of our people going to the polls that day. Number 4, we believe that if you have a vote by mail component in your state, that there are certain standards that should be adhered to ensure safety and security in the elections process. So if you use absentees or if you use universal vote by mail, you should also have to provide a copy of a valid photo ID when you participate. And last but not least, we believe that it's election day, not an election week, not an election month, not an election season, but election day. And when the polls close on election day, all the legal votes that have been cast should be counted for the candidate of that person's choice on election day.
Yeah, to me, that just sounds so common sense. I'm just listening to everything you say, and it's like, I find it hard to argue with that, but some people do. I don't understand. I mean, it's so straightforward. I don't think you're asking much to get IDs. I mean, we live in a world now where everybody's got to show an ID for something.
Well, in our state, the legislation that I helped pass back in 2011 allows the state of Alabama to provide a free voter ID for any individual that does not have an ID, like a driver's license or another government issued ID. And in our state, when we hold our voter registration photo ID drives, and we do it at least one time a year in every county, usually adding up to more than 100 total visits to the 67 counties, we make those IDs available. But if they can't go to one of the festivals, events, or activities where we're located, if they can't go to the courthouse that's open every day to do business and they can't get one, on the rare instance when that occurs, we will go to their homes and we will give them a photo ID at their home. And we've done that on more than 25 occasions since I've been the secretary.
John, the only question that I had, and I saw it on the internet, and I don't know what the heck is true on the internet and what's not, but that even if you show up at the polling station in Alabama and you don't have a voter ID, they will take your vote provisionally, and then I guess there's more steps to make sure that they are who they are. Is that correct or incorrect?
Correct, but I think it should also be noted that if two of the poll workers at that particular polling site can identify you because they know you, because they have a relationship with you, they know your name, they can sign an affidavit at the polling site and you can vote a regular ballot that day.
And in Alabama, a lot of the polling people know the people in their community pretty much?
Yes, especially in our areas, because the people that work the polls have been working the polls for several years. And of course, we have 5 million people in our state. I'm not going to say that we're like Wyoming, South Dakota, and North Dakota, where we have our regular secretaries meetings. I'm always asking the secretary and his or her staff, well, what did y'all do with the other 8 people you left in your states? They've obviously all come to the conference, but I think it's important that most of our people do know folks in their communities, especially in the rural areas.
I don't understand how with a straight face and they can beat you up about saying that you're suppressing voter, turnout.
It's part of the narrative that helps them raise money for their liberal causes throughout the nation. And that's the reason that they do it. I don't even know that they believe everything that they're saying, but I do believe that they're trying to use that as an advantage. I've testified before Congress on 3 occasions, and every time I introduce the successes that we've experienced and I talk about the numbers that we produced, the liberal members of Congress want to go back and talk about what happened in Alabama in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, voter laws. And I explain to them each and every time, I wasn't even born.
Right.
I can't do anything about what happened at that time. I can say this. I've been able to do something about it since January the 19th, 2015, and we've done it better than any other state in the union.
It sounds like it. Is there any other state out there that goes out to somebody's house and tries to give them an ID for free? Do you know?
No. And we share that with our colleagues because it's easy to do. It's not required by law in our state, but what it is, it's good customer service. And so we're taking care of our people the way that we know how, which is by visiting them and making sure their needs are met.
No, that every time I hear somebody that's actually in the position to talk about it, because there's a lot of people talking, but you're actually in a position to talk about it. And you hear people say that, it just stuns me when people, like Robert said, they're still trying to throw this narrative out. And I'm like, I think people want people to vote.
They do.
And I'm a little bit older than you. Okay. But I don't, I think that in most of my lifetime, people wanted people to vote. I can remember being at Old Jenkins Elementary, where me and Robert went to school together a million years ago, right?
Yeah.
And voting was a big deal, and you had everybody out there, and it was huge. And I've waited in long lines to vote for people, and I've heard other people talk about it. And, and then you get on and listen to some things like we were talking about, and it's like, nobody's at the polls because they won't let you vote. And what was your percentage for your state again?
94.
Well, we had, I think, 64% of our people go to the polls and vote in the last general election. But the bigger number to me is that we had 2.3 million Alabamians go to the polls, which is more than 200,000 people that have ever voted in any election in the history of the state prior to this one. And that's what I'm talking about, continuing to break election voting records each and every cycle. That's the thing that's so important to me. It's not about percentages in as much as it's about actual people that are actually going to the polls and casting their ballot for the candidate of their choice.
This is the most interesting election, 2020, of my life. Okay. How do you combat all the different theories of stuff and I don't want to call them conspiracy theories because that's used as a kind of slam, so I'm not going to say that, but all these different theories that everybody has, and you're in a position where you're responsible. How do you handle that?
Well, we combat that with the facts, and we challenge them to show the facts that agree with their position. For example, when I talked to you about the total number of registered voters that we produced since January the 19th, 2015, 1,929,751, I have a name, I have an address, I have a birthday, I have a social security number, I have a driver's license number, I have a telephone number if provided, I have an email address if provided for all of those people. And when these folks come up and say, well, we had some votes changed in your state, we know that that occurred, or we know that there were a certain number of folks that were negatively impacted because of this or that. But I ask them to produce those numbers and they can't produce them. I can produce a person for each individual that I mentioned to you. They can't do it. And since they can't do it, that's the concern for them. And yet, because so many people operate with a high level of keyboard courage today, where they can make any allegations or any charges they want to make, then it's difficult to combat that because they'll just sit there and continue to say something else. But we have proof. We have empirical data. That's what separates us from them.
Yeah, one thing I liked when I was looking at the myth and facts, I thought, that's probably, and that will, by the way, that will be a link down there so they can check that out, right? So that people can see that, because I do agree. I think it's gigantically hard anymore to get information without all the other noise hitting. From both the right and the left. Okay, we're not acting like there's only one side of this. Okay, but both from the right and the left, and getting hit with all this noise. And unfortunately, and it's why I love that you're on the show, a lot of people say a lot of things that don't have anything to do with facts.
That's right. And again, they're always entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. Unless you can produce empirical data that supports your position, it's just a theory. And that's the difference between understanding what the scientific theory is all about, where you can actually prove your position through different experiments and different facts, or you're just sitting there talking and running your mouth.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. And I will tell you, the internet's got a lot of that. And look, I understand. We've been doing this show a whopping 10 episodes, so we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, we really do.
We understand that you got to be a little bombastic. Okay. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. The crazier my title is, the more hits we get. Okay. Look, so I'm not acting like I don't understand. No crazy title for you, however, John. Great.
He's awesome. I told y'all he's awesome.
But there's one thing to be a tad bit clickbaitish. Let's call it that. Yeah. To be a tad bit clickbaitish. Okay. And I understand that. It's another thing to just go on some major attack with no facts. And I do think it puts public servants in a weird way. Being, all the police experience I have, and being a chief, and Robert being an attorney, and all the things that we've done, and Deanna being involved in a bunch of stuff, you understand that you put yourself in harm's way when you're trying to do things legit. But actually, when you're the Secretary of State of the great state of Alabama, you have to deal with the facts, and you can't just go off the hinges because somebody wants you to. So I find that impressive that you're able just to stay right on the track.
The things that we do is we make sure that people know what the facts are. Just like when charges were levied that Alabama's voting machines actually were manipulated and produced false results. And as I'm in communication with people who are making those charges, and they talk about, the Dominion machines that you use have been proven to be ineffective and can be manipulated. And I'm like, we don't use Dominion equipment in our state. And then I said, we use ES&S, which is Election Systems and Software, based in Omaha, Nebraska. And they'll say, those machines can be programmed, and because of the modem component there, they can be manipulated. And I'm like, not in Alabama, because since I'm secretary, we have ordered all new tabulators, and we have all new election equipment in the state since I've been the secretary, which we have provided for each and every county. And with that being said, it should also be noted that when I had the RFP, the request for proposal, created, I made sure that we did not have a modem component included in the tabulator. I actually told them to leave it out. I did not want data to be able to be transferred through an electronic device like a cell phone or a landline. And so all of our machines were intimately constructed for our specifications, and we did not have a problem. I've had someone recently say, well, they could put a chip in there and then it could be manipulated. Well, first of all, it's a tabulator. It's not a computer. It's a tabulator, which means that it only records the data that's uploaded and impacted in that tabulator. The other thing to note is that I could put a chip on that styrofoam cup that I used yesterday, and you're transfer data from it. So you can say whatever you want to say, but it does not have the ability to move the data. And that's the reason why I didn't want anybody that ever interviewed me or anybody I ever had a conversation with to be able to say legitimately that we know this could happen because of the potential for the concern to be arisen and then to be dealt with.
But we don't count votes in this country on what can be, what can happen.
You're right.
That's right.
Yeah,
And-
I think that one of the things there, John, is that's great, because I do get the feeling sometimes that people think that, the election process is some haphazard thing that y'all are just making up, or any state, we just threw this together.
Sure.
Well,
But
Michigan's a little iffy.
one of the things that I told these individuals that I wish they would do, and I would give them a recommendation for doing it at the local level, is they need to contact their local probate judge, their local circuit clerk, their local sheriff, and say, I want to be a poll worker. I want to go to the polls and I want to work the polls. I want to see how it happens at the polling site, because that will answer 98% of the questions that they have, and they'll see just how out of touch their theories are about what has happened, how it can happen.
And I think we all want fair elections. And I mean, I don't think anybody's out here that doesn't want a fair election. I'm gonna say that. But I think sometimes people go to the other extreme, and there you go. Okay, John, you're dealing with the fact that you actually have a regular job called Secretary of State, and you can't deal with all the craziness on a day-to-day level because there is real work to be done. But I got a question to ask. How does that political theater, just the stuff that we see on the news, the internet, how does that affect like what's going on with you and throughout the country for people that actually have to focus on doing the job?
Well, it impacts us in a dramatic way. We have a number of telephone calls that we receive every time a new news story or news cycle is created related to the administration of the election, because people are concerned. They have questions. And that doesn't just happen in our office. It happens in offices all across the nation where election administration is a part of their task, because people want to make sure things have been done right and well. And then when new things are introduced, whether they have any basis or not, whether they are valid or not, it does not matter. People are still on edge, and they want to make sure that it's properly responded to and that their questions are answered. Unfortunately, we have so many people today, if they have a cell phone, they think they are a news source. And so their thoughts, and they will share their concerns as if they had the same validity as Walter Cronkite, Howard Case, or Harry Reasoner, Chet Huntley, or David Brinkley, because they all think that they're at the same level as those gentlemen were. And we all know that they're not.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the interesting things, even within our own show with Two Average Joes, a lot of times we're talking, or I do some writing and stuff, and you do things, and, you're trying to keep focused as much as you can. Okay. But I'll tell you something, even as something as simple as like physical fitness, we'll get off the politics, right? Because I'm into that too. And you go to get some research, and after a while, you just realize that half of this is crazy. I mean, we're not talking heavy duty politics. We're talking physical fitness, right? And you're like, I'm going to be honest with you, half of this is totally insane. And then you get over to the politics side, like we're doing here, and you're like, that's insane. on both sides of and again, it's on both sides of the spectrum. We're not picking on anybody, but it is insane. And, when we had an opportunity to get you to come on the show, I'm thinking, I just wonder, because I think that we all deal with it in our day-to-day jobs. You have your real functioning stuff you have to do. And then the next thing you know, you got 400 phone calls, about stuff that you don't know if it's true. It's like, not trying to get off the topic, but I'm watching the news right now, the young lady, and it's a tragedy that she was murdered.
Right.
On the news, tragedy, she was murdered. But when they asked for the citizens' help, I thought, I wish you had called me first. Because I would have said, no, don't give them a phone number. No. They'll see him everywhere. You understand me?
Right.
You talk, Gabby?
Yeah, don't ask for people's help, because they're going to give it to you. It's just they're going to be, most of it's going to be wrong, and you're going to waste valuable time
Right.
searching things that does not have any validity. And I'm not even sure that people mean well. And that's what I worry about when we start talking about the politics, right? Come back to the politics side of this and the political side of it. You start to go, I let a lot of people talking. And I appreciate you saying that everybody has their opinion, and I appreciate it, and I believe that too. But I also sometimes wonder, I don't know if everybody's motives are good.
Oh, we know that they're not.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating, because you see this in anything, whether it's teaching school, whether it's practicing law, whether it's acting as a detective or a law enforcement officer, whether it's being a football coach. Everybody has their own opinion about what needs to be done or what should be done. But certain people are recognized as experts in the field. That's the vocation they have selected. That's the path they've chosen for themselves. That is the area where people refer to them as an expert in the field. They have more knowledge. They have more ability. They have more strength than people. And if they don't, they'll be separated from the good folks because of their actions or inaction as time progresses. But you also have got to make sure that you are giving them the credit that they have earned because of their service. And if you just say, well, they don't know anything. I mean, there's people in Alabama that don't think Nick Saban's a good football coach. Most of them are Auburn fans, but still.
I was going to say, they're probably from another school.
I do think to note that whether you think he's a good football coach or not, doesn't matter.
Right.
What he thinks is what matters. And he doesn't care what you think.
I believe that 100%. I think it is interesting because football is a good analogy, especially in the South. Right.
I'm only saying you, not anybody else, you, because
I think in the South, where we take football very seriously, right? I do find it interesting that on these shows, they're questioning, they lost the game, having helped, having helped to lose a game every now and then, right? And they're questioning. I'm like, how many national championships does this guy need to win for you? But I do agree with you. We have empowered people to the point that they are experts when they're not.
You just summed it up.
Yeah, just totally empowered them. I watched a couple of Alabama games. I know what I would have done. No, you don't. You don't. You know what I mean? You don't. But I do find it crazy. Mr. Baker, you look contemplative over there. I know you're in deep thought.
Yeah, I was thinking about, Alabama, because of Mr. Merrill or John, they had the 2020 election dialed in. But I can tell you in Michigan that I think in Detroit, parts of Detroit, there was a higher voter turnout than registered voters. And when they went to send the people to watch them count, that they had put newspapers over the window so they couldn't see them recounting the votes. So the narrative on CNN and other mainstream media was this is the most pristine election that we've ever had. And, I seriously doubt that. But I think, and John, give me your thought on this, is that they've allowed the integrity of our voter system to be attacked by these issues that have occurred, because there are some problems with some of the voting tabulating software packages.
There's no doubt about it. And the example that you gave is a good one, because see what you saw after the 2016 election were Democrats saying there's no way that the election was run well. There's a concern and we need to investigate the concern. We need audits. We need to make sure that things are done to ensure that things were done right and well. Now in 2020, you have many conservatives and Republicans who say there was a lot of cheating that went on, and we need to make sure that we have audits and that we have checks and balances in the process. And they say that, and they do that because their candidate lost. It doesn't have to do with the actual administration of the election. And that's what it's creating, because there's a standard that has to be adhered to. And if your candidate wins, that's great. If your candidate loses, you got to get over it and move past it and get ready for the next cycle. So those things that we have got to reach as far as a point of resolution in saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing from this point forward. This is our understanding of what our requirements are, what we are bound to do, and this is going to happen.
You know, one thing I think that going on what Robert said that I think added to the frustration is in 2016, the elections, you know, totally been robbed, been stolen. Then 20 happens, and then yet the other side saying it was stolen, right? And then the side that was all about it being stolen for 4 years is walking around like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
It's not crazy stuff like that.
Joe, not only did they say that, they say it was the best election in the history of the Republic.
That's what gets me. That gets me. I can't imagine that.
You know, so I think sometimes that's why I think that it's good to have balanced people on that are actually doing it, because I can actually understand the heat. You know, you're talking about the facts, and that's what we want on the show. But I can understand the heat. You know what I'm saying? Where, you know, for 4 years, you know, you would have thought that the Russians are over here voting for everybody, right? And then all of a sudden, Trump loses, and we go like, hey, that looks a little shady, right? And then it's like, oh, I can't believe anybody would question an election.
After 4 years.
Yeah. And I think that's what got everybody crazy. I think it's why we have to have balanced people in elected, and that's not easy to do. And you know I'm telling the truth, right?
No
but we
doubt.
have to have balanced people in elected positions.
And the thing that you have to remember, and I just shared this group last week, there were probably 140 to 150 women that were at this event that I spoke at, all conservative Republican women. And one of them asked me about a task force I've just put together on voter fraud evaluation and voter fraud reform, making sure that there are definitions in the code for that, making sure that the penalties that we have for that, whenever you've been convicted, are commensurate with the crime. We've had 6 convictions on voter fraud since I've been the secretary, 2 elections overturned, and 1 elected official removed because of inappropriate behavior related to election administration. But what I shared with them was what we're doing with this voter fraud commission is not about what's best for Republicans. It's certainly not what's best for Democrats, but what's best for Alabamians, because I'm the Secretary of State of Alabama, not the Secretary of State for the Republicans in Alabama or the Democrats in Alabama, but for Alabama. And when you're an elected official, you're supposed to do what's right and best for your people in your state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you got to be stable. I want to kind of end it on this note, though, because I really want your opinion on this, because you said something at the beginning of the show that I thought was very important. And as a Southern guy myself, and, you know, dealing with, you know, regardless of what you think about anything, you know, the past keeps creeping up. It is kind of amazing that we have to fight that like you said, you know, here you are, you know, you can sit here and talk about all this stuff, you know, all the things that Alabama has done that is wonderful. And yet you're going to get questions about something that happened in 1940. And we're not saying that 1940 was okay, but there's a lot of truth to the fact that we were not alive.
And not go back and change the past as much as some of these revisionists are trying to do so. The most important thing is that you look at where you were not as successful as you wish you had been, and you want to make the changes to make it a better, safer, more fair, more secure opportunity for everyone, no matter what that is. But we can't go back and say this or that because you didn't like the thing that was going on at that particular time. You've got to do what's best from today forward.
Yeah. I find it weird, and I think this is not a political thing. This is more of a media thing, that you can do all the good things that you do, where it's happening in a lot of places. You know, you can be as inclusive as you want to be, which we do in a lot of places, and you can try your best to be fair to everybody, which we do in a lot of places. And yet, you know, the South in particular kind of gets hit with, like, you know, what happened back in the day. It's like, no one's ever said that was right. Let me clarify that. No one ever said that was right. It's just, right. We're trying to fix it. And administrations have done a great job, you know, and I felt that way with a lot of things.
There's no better example of that than Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which required pre-clearance from the Justice Department when changes were to be made in Southern polling places or the administration of elections in certain areas in the South, because they said people were not fair or right. But then when Shelby v. Holder was ruled on in 2013 and cleared that up, where you did not have to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department, now we've got all these Democrats in Congress that say they're just running over everybody. Look, the decisions about how many polling places that you have in a county, those decisions are made by the people in the county. They're not made by the people in Montgomery. And I know how it is in other states, but I know how it is in our state. And I get tired of people saying that we're trying to keep people from participating. Nobody in this state has to drive more than 15 minutes from their home to a particular place to vote. Nobody. So there's not a problem in getting to a particular location and casting your ballot for the candidate of your choice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I come back to the ID thing too. It's like, you know, it's 2021, and most people have an ID, and you got to have an ID to do about everything.
That's right.
You know,
open an account, to get an insurance account, to go to the hospital, to buy alcohol, to buy tobacco products, to go to a movie. You have to have an ID for all of those purposes. As a matter of fact, you had to have an ID to get in the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah, they didn't forget to mention it. It does. It amazes me. And then when you have you come on and say, look, we go, and understanding some people may that still be hard. You do you went to their house, right?
That's exactly.
Like, look, I can't help you from there, you know, but that is tickles me, because I flew up to Michigan a couple of times to see Robert. And all I could think about is, you know, it's interesting that they want to see my ID. Because I'm not flying unless they see my ID, right?
Right.
You know, so yeah. There for a while, I've only been back in Mississippi a short time. There for a while, you couldn't buy Sudafed in this state without an ID. Okay? Just saying, there you go. You know, you know, you act like an ID is the most amazing thing. I got tickled when I think about the mail-in ballots. One of the arguments was, you can do your taxes and mail those in. Yeah, you can. Lie on your taxes. Just, you know, since you can just do it, lie on your taxes. When the IRS comes to your house, it's going to be unpleasant.
That's exactly.
Yeah, there's a big, I like that. I said, yeah, that's my point. If there is a tremendous amount of punishment for being fraudulent, I'd be okay with it. You know, like if you're lying on taxes.
We're evaluating those things now with our voter fraud reform task force.
Yeah, it is. That's a hard thing, you know. And I like what you said. It's an election day. It's not the election season. Okay, you know. And, you know, it's weird. Everybody wants a fair election until it doesn't look like they're helping their guy or gal. And it's like, hey, you know, I'm okay with a few sliding in. John, I want to thank you, man. It has been great. I really appreciate it. Robert, you got any more questions?
No questions, just a comment. John, I appreciate that. It seems like the Alabama Secretary of State is a beacon of hope for maybe the nation as far as the election, the way that it's being handled goes, and that the 5 points, hopefully they all seem common sense and that they could be accepted and used in all the other jurisdictions. But I appreciate your candor and your insight and your help in all of this. And thank you for coming on our show.
Right. Sir, great to be with y'all.
Deliverance, you got anything to say?
I told y'all he was awesome.
And you were right. John,
Totally.
you have a
I
book.
told you. I love him. He's awesome.
I agree. John, you have a book, don't you?
I do. We wrote a book in 2019 about Alabama's bicentennial. We wanted to feature 365 notable Alabamians in our first 200 years, but we had so many that we had to expand it to about 425 notable Alabamians in our first 100 years. The title of the book is Alabama, the Bicentennial. We have been selling the book now for a couple of years, and it costs $20. Every time we sell one, $5 goes to my co-author, and the other $15 goes to the Department of Archives and History to help underprivileged children that are not able to join their classmates for their fourth grade field trip. And then their teacher, their counselor, their principal, their parent can make application to Friends of the Archives in Montgomery and have their field trip paid for so they can join their classmates at no cost to the school or the community.
I love it. We're going to have a link for that, John, down there.
Oh my God, like that's so sweet. Sorry.
We're gonna have a link for that. And John, we really appreciate you. And I want to say this. Hopefully you will come back
I'd love
and be able to like talk about what's really happening.
Right.
Glad. Now I tell you, we didn't even talk about this, Joe, but I think it's important to mention before we go that our office has also streamlined efficiencies in the area of business services, which is more than 65% of what we do each and every day. And just to finish by saying this, we've gone from 49 employees to 36 team members. They were processing paperwork 7 to 9 months behind when we arrived. And for 5 years, 6 months, and 5 weeks, we've been at same day on business services filing with 13 fewer people. And we have saved, as of Friday, $2,319,021.21. We're not operating at the speed of government. In our office, we operate at the speed of business.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, and I think that when you come back, we need to address that because I do think that there is a business side of it. Like
Yeah.
there is a business side of government.
Yeah.
And
We need more about that, and we need to have a higher level of expectation from our governmental entities at the federal, at the state, and at the local level as far as meeting the needs of the people in our jurisdictions. And we see that all the time, but we need to give that some real attention.
we'll do it. The next time we're on, we'll do that. We need to talk about business because I will share this with you. Anybody that's dealt with a lot of government agencies will tell you.
Mhm.
Look, I'm going to share something with you just to give you a little insight. Unless I knew somebody from another police department, I basically hated calling them.
Right.
You know, you would find, like if you went to these conferences and you knew you dealt with these, you would go get business cards to try to make contact because
Right.
you knew if you called I don't care if you were the chief, if you called the information desk, heaven helped you.
Right.
It didn't matter. You know, you really do. You have to, you know, and it shouldn't be that way, though. That's the point. The point is you should be able to get service no matter who you are.
No matter who you are, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
True.
Okay, my friend, I appreciate you being here. Robert, thank you. Deliverance, thank you. And we'll see
Hey,
everybody next week.
See.
Next week, next Sunday, let's do this.
Definitely.
Got it. Be there.